Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be coming into video number 2, toxic trends that are killing America. And today we're going to be talking about the dangerous doctrines that have been creeping into our nation. Doctrines that are not unique with America. They're foreign. They have been coming and dripping into our nation bit by bit, and America is starting to adopt and listen to these doctrines, and it will destroy us. These are poisonous. These are toxic trends. So we want to break that down for you here today. And I've been warning America, came off the mission field to warn America that we cannot continue in our national sins. If we do, we will see destruction. God will bring judgment. And part of it is an enemy that has come within. There are two that we'll primarily talk about. One we'll focus on today. The other we'll just introduce. One is Islam, the doctrines of Islam. Now, let me make clear, I'm not talking about the Muslim. The Muslim, they're just the people. They're also victims of the doctrines of Islam. I was a missionary overseas for 29 years, spent majority of my life overseas. I'm the founder of Missions to Muslims. I know pretty well what this religion teaches, but we're not going to cover that very deeply today. We're going to talk about the other part here in a minute, but let me just say this. We as Christians have a duty to earnestly contend for the faith. A man claimed to be a prophet, and we have to protect true teaching from false teaching. The word earnestly contend, the Greek word there, agonizomai, that's where we get the word agonize. So this is something we don't do passively. This is something we do with intent and with passion. We passionately contend for the faith. We were warned that false prophets would come in and we would test them. How do we test it? We test it with the word. If they're not preaching what God has already told us, we know they're a false prophet. If they're a false prophet, we ought to stand up and name them as false prophets and to mark them that cause division contrary to the doctrines that we've already received and avoid them. We here at Fortress of Faith do that, and we are following our biblical mandate. But we don't do that in hate. We do it actually out of love because we want others to know the truth, not to be kept in false teaching and in a lie. So there's the danger of the Muslim doctrine, actually Islam, but I'm using the word M for a reason. By the way, if you want more information about that, get my book, Refuting Islam. It's the main doctrine that we're talking about, two of them, the doctrines, the Muslim doctrine. And the second that we'll focus on today is the doctrine of Marxism, the dangers of Marxism. So let's break that down. Who is Karl Marx? Well, he lived in the 1800s. He was born in Prussia, studied in Germany. One of his heroes is Hegel. That brought us the dialectical method. The idea is this, is that the world has its status quo. And in that status quo, there'll be those who are tyrants, those who have risen up above others and taken advantage of them. And so that brings conflict into this world. And eventually, it should erupt in those who'll stand up and say, no, we don't want it anymore. And they're going to revolt against it and throw it off. Now, Karl Marx makes it very clear, this has to be a violent revolt. And eventually, you will have freedom because it's going to take violence to throw off the tyrants and then make a new status quo. He was a devout atheist. He got his PhD in the subject that philosophy is superior to religion. So he hated God, and you'll see that in his teachings as well. He married an aristocrat's daughter, Jenny, who came from wealth, the very people he hated, the bourgeois, as he called them, and made her join him in deep, deep poverty. She lived a life of great abuse. In 1843, he only worked 1 year of his whole life. Only 1 year of his whole life He actually had a job. He was an editor in France, in Paris, but he was fired for that for his radical views. But he did develop a great friendship with Frederick Engels, who really became his financier. They shared letters back and forth. There's plenty of them. And just about every time he's asking for more money and bemoaning the power of the rich, the bourgeois. During this time, he wrote the Communist Manifesto. And finally, he was kicked out of France and kicked out of Germany. And the English had pity on him, and he moved into London, into a small little flat. And he lived in abject poverty. And that's the problem with his economic views, is that it doesn't raise people up. It brings everyone down. 4 of his children died before the age of 5. The 2 surviving children grew up, and later as adults, they killed themselves in a suicide pact. There, he wrote his 3 volumes of Das Kapital. And so he was buried in England, there in London at the Highgate Cemetery. And many years later, I think back in the 1980s, the Communist Party there bought him this nice little tombstone to commemorate his life and his influence on the world. Now, he believed that a person's worth is only derived from their ability to create and contribute to society. Basically, they were a cog in a big machine, and if it didn't work, it was removed. So life was not considered valuable in his system. And he believed that dissension will not be tolerated. You cannot have this type of governance if people object to it. So therefore, they have to be removed. Well, there have been people who tried to institute his form of government. Lenin, Stalin, Mao, King John. And with that came the butchering and the murder of millions, hundreds of millions of people who dissented, who did not agree that their property should be taken from them, and therefore they took their lives from them. He believed that the step from capitalism to communism was going to be too great, that there had to be kind of a middle step. And that middle step would be socialism. Socialism would be that, that midway point, but ultimately leading to communism. Our country here in America is already buying into socialism. At least our young people are. And we need to wake them up to the error of this way. Well, back when the American Communist Party was being started in the 30s and 40s, and the FBI was beginning to investigate all that, Cleon Skousen was he was definitely the top FBI agent on this topic. He was the spokesperson for the FBI around the nation, explaining the FBI's position and what they're doing and trying to keep this down. Well, he published his book after he left the FBI in 1958. He called it The Naked Communist. The reason for the title was simply, we're going to expose the communist views and ideas and goals, and we're going to reveal it as if they're stripped naked. They republished this book back in 1963, and in that he added the 45 communist goals here in the United States that they came across. Now, we're going to go through them because I think we need to be enlightened to what they were talking about. The first 12 deal with the Cold War and deal with, nuclear war and all that stuff. And so those do not really relate to our time today. But of these goals, you're going to understand, I believe that they have achieved them, all 50 of them, or at least the remaining ones here. Number 13. To do away with loyalty oaths. Basically, don't stand for the flag. Don't pledge the flag. Sit down, kneel down, or don't pledge at all. If you're triggered, don't do it. That's they've succeeded in that one, haven't they? Capture one or both of the political parties. Well, I believe they have genuinely done that. You can guess which one I think they got a hold of. Get control of the schools, use them for the transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. We're going to start teaching the young people our communist values, and I think they've succeeded in that. Use student riots to foment public protest against programs. Yep, we've been seeing that on our college campuses. Infiltrate the press. Tick. Yep, they've done that one for sure. Gain control of the media. Yep, pretty much all of it, it seems. Continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic impression. Let's go through this. You'll be surprised by this. Eliminate all good sculpture from parks and buildings. Substitute shapeless, awkward, meaningless forms. 23, control art critics and directors of art museums. Our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsive, meaningless art. Isn't it interesting that, we see this going on, but I've been left when I started studying this. This surprised me actually when I came across this list a few years back, and I was asking the question, why? Why are they doing this? Well, I believe it's this: God, because of their hatred against God, they're trying to promote anything that's anti-God. God brings beauty to the world. Look at our creation. Boy, he did. He brings beauty to the world. They want to bring ugliness, stuff that's repulsive. And, so I think it's an act against God. 24, eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and violation of free speech. We've had to fight to be able to use software on our TV to take out the offensive things, and they have been suing companies like VidAngel and so on there. They don't want us to keep that away from our kids and out of our homes. They want it in our homes. Break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity. There was a time, man, when I was younger, if you wanted to get into pornography, you had to go look for it. Today, you've got to put filters in your home to keep it out, to lock it out, to keep it from sneaking in. 26, present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal and healthy. Well, we have a constant diet of homosexuality on our TV, on our programs now, and they're making it the norm. They're succeeding. Infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with social religion. Yep, the popular churches are the ones who are doing that. They're preaching chicken soup messages to warm the cockles of hearts instead of preaching God's judgment, wrath, righteousness, and living a separated life. Yep, they're succeeding. Eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression in the schools. Well, certainly can check that box. Discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, and out of step with modern needs. Yep, they have succeeded that in many minds. Discredit the American founding fathers, present them as selfish aristocrats. Yep, they've certainly gotten that one done. They're the racist that brought us our country. Belittle all forms of American culture and discourage the teaching of American history. It's a shock to hear what our young people do not know about our country. Support any a socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the culture, education, social agencies, welfare programs. They don't want the states to be in control of things. They don't want local governments in control. They want a centralized control. They want the federal government to control it, and they are succeeding. Discredit and eventually dismantle the FBI. I think they've actually done one better. They've captured the FBI. Infiltrate and gain controls of more unions. Yep. Transfer some of the powers of arrest from the police to social agencies. Yep. Did you not notice what they were doing in 2020? Defund the police. Over in Seattle, we had the Chaz and all that going on there. They were trying to infiltrate and set up their own form of police and arrest controls. They ended up in great chaos and murders. Treat all behavioral problems as psychiatric disorders, which no one can but psychiatrists understand. Yep, you've got this phobia. You're an Islamophobe. You're a transphobe. You're this phobe. You've got a mental illness. Yep, they're definitely doing that. Dominate the psychiatric profession and use mental health laws as a means of gaining control. Yep. Discredit the family as an institution. Encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. Well, our country is broken because our families are broken. Like the cells are to a body, the family are the cells to a nation. And they're being destroyed. They've succeeded. Emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. Yep, it takes a village, right? According to Hillary. Create the impression that violence and insurrection are legitimate aspects of American tradition. Never mind that our Constitution says to peacefully gather and protest. No, they want to make it violent. And violence is the essential part of the Marxist form. Well, the last remaining goals, again, were more of the 50s and 60s and things that were going on with the arms race and everything else. But all these other goals, all but one, creating a new police force, a citizen police force. I don't think they've succeeded in that one quite yet, but we can see that they've been attempting it. Yes. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 2 says this, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. Our country has been mourning because of these ideologies that have been not just creeping in, they're flooding in. We're on a free fall. Our young people are on a constant diet of this in their universities, and we've got to put a stop to it. We got to protect our children from it. Parents, you need to inform your kids that they're going to be accosted with this and give them biblical answers to be able to stand alone in that environment. Remember the lesson in the Bible of the potter. We have in Jeremiah chapter 18, where God says to the prophet, go down to the potter's house. I'm going to speak to you there. He gets down there and he sees the potter and he's working and fighting with this vessel that is just rebelling. It's not yielding itself to the master's hand. And finally, after struggling and struggling and struggling, he's had enough and he just crushes it and throws it away and starts all over again. That's when God speaks to the prophet. He says, Jeremiah, just as the clay is in the hand of the potter, so is the nation of Israel in my hand. If it continues to struggle and fight against me and not yield, I have the right to destroy it and to throw it away. Then he goes on to speak to other nations. And he said, even if other nations do this, I have the right to destroy them. But if they repent, I will repent of the evil that I was going to do to them. I'm here to tell you, folks, that America is in trouble, but there's still hope. We can repent. We can yield to the hand of God. But if we don't, America, you're not too big to fail. God can bring us to our knees, and it'll be painful. I pray that we will repent and turn to revival. Next time we come back, we're going to be getting into the woke doctrine and discover that not only is woke is broke, but woke is wrong. Come back once again to the corner of truth and courage, and be salt and light and take a stand for what is right. God bless you.